Hey bosses, it's Marie from Asian Boss. By now you probably heard the news about the tragic Halloween disaster in Itaewon, where 156 innocent people have lost their lives, including 26 foreigners. The incident sent shockwaves across Korea and the expat community, especially because Itaewon is such a popular international district for foreign residents. Out of respect for the deceased and those who are grieving, we're not going to do a regular street interview to sensationalize this incident like all the media outlets are doing now. It was actually quite appalling to see how they all tried to get those who lost someone and were grieving to do an interview in front of the camera. That said, a lot of you asked us to provide some perspectives and show how this is impacting the foreigner community. So we were able to gather a group of foreigners who wanted to voice their opinions on this issue. This is what they had to say. Thanks for doing this interview with us today. Could you tell us how long you have been living in Korea and how familiar you are with Itaewon?
So I've been living in Korea for about 5 years. I actually used to live in the area Itaewon.
The first time I was here was 2011, so it's been off and on close to 10 years.
I've been living in Korea now for 11 years, over 11 years.
I've been living in South Korea for 20 years. 18 of those years have been in Itaewon.
So I've been in Korea almost 4 years now. And Itaewon is like, I'm here almost every weekend.
I've been living in Korea for 3.5 years, and this neighborhood specifically for like 3 years and 2 months. So I'm really familiar with Itaewon. I go there multiple times a week. Like my bank is there, my gym is there. I've walked the streets hundreds of times, and I'm also a stand-up comedian, and I perform a lot in Itaewon.
So for very unfortunate reasons, Itaewon has been making a lot of international headlines lately. But for those overseas who might not be too familiar with Itaewon, how would you describe the place? Like, what's it known for?
Short answer, it's basically the largest international kind of community sort of district in Seoul. It's a place to come, like, have some fun nightlife, to chill, experience, like, if you're feeling a little homesick and stuff like that, you miss some like homegrown cuisine and stuff like that, like they got you covered.
As the song goes, and it's a little cliche, but Itaewon Freedom, this is a community I think where both Koreans and multicultural, again, multi-ethnic communities have really gathered, because this is a place where we felt free to be who we are.
It's a place where a lot of the refugees from the Korean-American War settled. It has the influence of the embassies nearby and the American military base. So because of that, for years and years, it has been a place specifically for international culture in Korea. All of us move here, or a lot of us move here. We're hundreds of miles away from our families. We're separated, we're lonely, and the community here of international people becomes like a surrogate family in a way.
As a black person, Itaewon is an escape from, Korea is 96% homogenous, like 90% of the population is Korean. And Itaewon is the only place where I walk around and nobody stares at me. I'm in Seoul, pretty many parts of Seoul it's like that, but especially in Itaewon where I can be either alone or with friends and nobody pays attention to you. You can basically disappear. Whereas anywhere else you are in Korea, you stand out. It's never really a bad thing when you stand out, but sometimes it gets too much when everyone is staring at you and you just want to just go about your day and do whatever you need to do.
Unfortunately, during COVID, there was a situation in which Itaewon became a ghost town, for lack of a better words, for about a year. And just recently, it's started, up until the situation, it started to make a resurgence.
It's estimated that around 130,000 people gathered in Itaewon for celebrating Halloween before the disaster happened. So is it normal that this type of a crowd is gathering around Itaewon for occasions like Halloween? And do you think that Itaewon can handle this kind of crowd size?
I mean, this is nothing new, I think, for Itaewon. This kind of gathering's been going on for years and years and years. And before COVID, the crowds were just as big, if not even bigger, from what I've heard. But at that time, they definitely had more crowd management, more police. Yeah, so I think with this time around, it was expected that, it was going to be a really big crowd because it's the first time in 3 years that people can actually gather freely without any COVID restrictions.
For years, Itaewon has been the place to go visit during Halloween. Itaewon can handle that amount of crowds because 2 weeks before the incident, the Itaewon Global Village Festival happened, and it was reported that up to 1 million people were in attendance. And I don't see anyone reporting on that. The government shut down the streets. They had barricades up. They had police force there. Everyone knew that it was going to be crowded. Everyone, my friends and I even made the decision to not go specifically on Saturday because we knew it was going to be so packed. And even on Friday, I went into Itaewon and it was, again, extremely crowded and none of the streets were shut down. And even my friends and I, we were on the streets and I actually got hit by a car because I was walking along the street and someone opened up their car door into me and I didn't have space to move. So I have a huge bruise on my thigh right now. But even Friday night, it was still quite crowded, and that was a really good indication of how crazy it was going to be on Saturday.
So if you don't mind us asking, where were you on the night where the incident happened?
On Halloween, on the 29th, I was in Itaewon. We went into Itaewon approximately 7 o'clock, and we took some of the back alleys in. So from the south side of the main road, thinking it would be less congested and we could get to a venue we were headed to. And I was very surprised to see how crowded that street was. I was in front of the Hamilton Hotel about 9 o'clock. So in my social media, I posted some comments just in regards to this is scary. Maybe telling people to avoid the area and so forth, and this still kind of haunts me. I saw people coming out of Itaewon, some people very distraught, some people in shock, just describing what they had seen. And it's just, heartbreaking, and I had to leave the neighborhood myself because I didn't feel comfortable, and I felt, again, lost.
So is everyone you know safe right now?
Everyone I know is safe. In my circle of friends, acquaintances, 4 people who passed away. There's some association, so.
Very sorry to hear that.
So I wasn't in the crowd at the exact moment, but I walked down that path maybe an hour or 2 before. It took about 15 minutes to get down, and it's not even a 30-second walk. And as we were in the middle and there was moments we couldn't move, you started to do this kind of nervous laughter, like, is this going to be okay? And so I grabbed my friend's hand and we're making eye contact because I started to feel myself panic a little bit. And I was trying to get through it with humor, like, oh, this is crazy kind of situation. But as I realized we were not progressing, going forward in any direction, the panic started to set in. And I just had to remain calm and continue to walk until we got to the main street. But when you got to the main street and you looked behind you, you could not believe that that's what you were just a part of, the sea of people. It's truly a sea of people. I'd seen fire trucks and the ambulance, and I saw pumping, like a CPR, and on one body. So I didn't really know until around 1:30 a.m. that what had truly happened, and that's when we started getting the numbers. So I was completely devastated at that point. I went home and I just processed everything. Thousands of people, we are all feeling maybe a type of, I was only 30 minutes away from that. What if I turn that corner? All of us are going through, I looked it up, it's called survivor's guilt. It's just, this is our home. This is Itaewon.
The initial plan was a bunch of friends, we have a few drinks in Itaewon, and then when it gets busy, move to Hongdae because I was DJing at a party. I looked at the time, I'm like, if we go to Itaewon now, I'm gonna spend 45 minutes and then we have to leave. So I said, let's just skip Itaewon. We'll tell everyone else to meet us there. So then I messaged my friends, I'm like, I'm not gonna come to Itaewon, just come to Hongdae, and whenever you guys are ready, you come through. So then one group of friends, managed to leave just before the crash happened. Another group of friends only arrived around 1. So my one friend had to like navigate their way over dead bodies, and like they were like, yeah, it was just lined up in the street. And when he told me, I'm like, dude, you lying? Like, I'm like, nah. And then another friend came through, told me the same thing. I'm like, what's going on? And then I went online and I saw everything, and yeah, it was hard to continue a night in a festive mood after that.
So I actually work at a pub restaurant on the big street of Itaewon, and we were just seeing like EMTs like doing CPR on 2 people at a time. Like they would go on one person for like a couple rounds and then just move on to the person whoever was next to them. So at that point, like I was on the clock, I was working, and there's still people there. And people are still enjoying the night, and but then at one point, yeah, my boyfriend and his group of friends were there, and just by the time I was actually able to like notice my surroundings, I noticed that they were gone. So I was just looking for him and his friends, and that's when I saw him performing CPR on a man in the street. So immediately I ran down to help. And I'm certified in CPR back in the States. I did a course a long time ago in high school, but that the knowledge is still with me. So I really wanted to, just help. But then I was told, oh, sorry, you can't touch anyone because you're a foreigner. So, but there was an EMT holding a blanket around my boyfriend and his friend, helping a couple people because people were just taking videos and laughing, and my boyfriend's face was just covered in blood because he was performing CPR, and with CPR you have to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, right? So like people were just like taking videos of him and like laughing, oh, like look at this guy, whatever, and I got so angry, and just I turned to the man who was right next to me because I was just waiting for an opportunity to help in any way. And I just turned to him, I was like, is this funny? Like, are you serious right now? Because he was on the phone talking to his friend, and his girlfriend was next to him. And I was like, does your boyfriend actually think this is funny? Like that guy is dying, and my boyfriend's trying his best to help and save him. There was that abandoned or like unoccupied store next to the Hamilton Hotel where they were putting people, and like in our minds we really thought that we could save him, but when we brought the body over, we realized like everyone was covered. Everyone had the blue blankets covered over their bodies, and we realized like, oh God, this is not where they're going to help him. This is where they're putting everyone that they are presumed dead. And it was just so shocking to see. At that point, it wasn't even like that late. It was maybe around 11:30. So there were still, and I passed by where the crush was, and you can just see all of the bodies on the ground, just waiting to be pulled out. And then there was like that guilt, that like had we maybe tried harder, we could have saved at least this one guy. And then his other friends were also giving CPR on other people, and they all passed. And just we all had that same feeling, like had we maybe gone earlier, had we known earlier, maybe we could have done something. But I was just so, like, there was just so many emotions at that time because I had the skills and I had the ability, but solely just because I'm a foreigner, they wouldn't let me help. And like, I speak Korean. I've been here a very long time. And so it's just one of those other moments on top of everything going on. Like I can't say that I faced a lot of discrimination in Korea because I'm white passing. I'm half Arab, half white. but so I can't say that I experienced so much discrimination, but in that moment I was just like, I was just so angry that I was like, had you let me help, maybe it could have lightened the load on somebody else, on an actual on an EMT who could have helped somebody else.
How is the local media reporting on this issue, and who are they blaming for this crowd crush?
In regards to the local news coverage, I think it's been very well done. Okay, all the channels have been devoting a lot of time. I'm happy to see that both journalists are trying to understand the stories of not only trying to find why this occurred, but also trying to find the stories about those who were tragically involved, the first responders, okay, the witnesses. Again, my heart goes out to my students who might have witnessed this, the families of the victims, those first responders, the police officers who had no backup.
From my understanding, I think a lot of the public seems to be pointing their anger and frustrations towards the officials, people like who were in charge of like basically delegating the police, not necessarily the police per se, although they have been given their fair share of animosity. Though I think a lot of it is tend towards particularly the mayor, the president, and then of course like the district representatives too as well, who kind of coordinate the people on the ground.
I mean, I think it's just so many little things that were happening all at the same time that just contributed to this one big accident. Like, just even the way that the roads are structured. The roads are so tiny, and then just having those mass amounts of people, and then restaurants closing at like 10 p.m., and having to get everybody out. In my heart of hearts, I really don't want to blame just the people who were there, or the bar owners or whatever, because again, people didn't know the severity of what was going on. The only people who knew were the people at the bottom of the hill that were actually seeing everything, and people that were trying to pull people out, and people that actually saw the main road with the bodies. But everyone behind where all of that crowd was, how could they know, honestly? And and the emergency message that was sent out was just oh, there's just too many people, if you can leave Itaewon, please do. But they didn't say there's a crowd crush, people are dying, please. But then again, that could have caused a panic and make things worse. I don't know how else things could have made it better, but yeah.
There are a lot of people who suffer trauma because of what they witnessed either in person or even just saw uncensored videos and images online. Is there anything you'd like to tell those people who are coping or trying to cope with it?
For the people who are suffering trauma, post-traumatic stress, I understand. I honestly think I'm probably suffering from it right now, and I'm using this as a method to find some catharsis, to find some answers within myself. I've been telling my students, I understand you're angry, you're sad, you might feel depressed. I feel the same way. I've cried more this week than I've remembered in my life, and it's tragic. So my heart goes out to everyone, and I just want to let everyone know that we're not alone. But at the same time, I think for Itaewon, we can't forget. We can never let this happen in South Korea. But at the same time, I hope that Itaewon will heal, that will move on. Okay, this can't be the end of Itaewon. We don't want to be known just for this tragedy. We need to help support the community, everyone's mental health, everyone's businesses, and so forth.
You're not alone. I think that's the most important thing to emphasize right now is it feels like they might be. It's not a weakness to seek help if you need it, obviously. Be there for those people too as well in your lives, because I think that's one of the takeaways from this unfortunate incident too as well, is because any day could be somebody's last day. So it's being there for the people when you can, as much as you can, when you feel like it too as well. I think in holding those precious people a little bit closer now.
Something that's been helping me personally was that especially because I know there are so many people that jumped in to help, and they also lost people. And I think for those people, it's not your fault, and you did the best that you could. At least that's what I try to tell myself, is that we did the best that we could. And then people who are watching, even if they weren't in the general area, whatever, but, people have this emotional attachment to Itaewon, and that's why they're so devastated and having a hard time, and that's okay too. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I wasn't even there, why am I having such a hard time? But it's like, no, that's okay too, because that was your safe place.
We also understand that there are 26 foreigners who also lost their lives during that tragedy, and do you know what's happening in terms of their funeral process? Is there anything you heard about that?
In regards to the funeral processes, I know that the government has been supporting. They're compensating families and helping repatriate their remains to their home countries. I'm also aware of there was one victim who was provided extra services to have her body remains returned back to, I believe, Russia on a ferry yesterday. Okay, both community members, I've read of celebrities contributing, government members stepping up to help the victim's family, which again had to be very difficult but courageous on the people who stepped forward to help.
I read about one, apparently it costs like $7,000 to bring the body back. Like, this is expensive. I mean, no one just has $7,000 lying around. On top of the pain of losing someone, now you must think about, how am I going to raise funds to bring back the body of so-and-so? Anywhere on vacation, the last thing that's on your mind is, if I die, what happens to me? So no one plans for that. And I'm pretty sure their families don't have any plans to.
How do you think the atmosphere of Itaewon changed after this incident happened?
So, unfortunately, I had to go into Itaewon the day after the accident happened, and it was completely surreal. I think it will take a long time for us to adjust and come back.
It's been a week, basically, so it's like whether or not, are people going to return? I don't think they are. I think it's going to be like this for a while. I want to be optimistic and say that it will bounce back. Will it be the same? I don't think after something this horrible happens, it'll ever be the same as it was. It could be better, but scars fade, but they don't go away. And I think that's something the people here are going to kind of hold on to for a while.
Today I was just about to have a meeting with my boss at the bar and say that I can't work there anymore, because I personally, right now in my present state, I can't afford mentally to go back there. So, and I think it might take a while for me personally, but I really hope that after this, the government can take more action in making sure that Itaewon's physically a safe place for a mass gathering of people that big. And because it was such a beautiful celebration every year, people were dressed up, and it'd be really such a shame not to have that anymore, or I'm sure it's still going to happen, but people are always going to be reminded of what happened. And I just hope that going forward we can just have that sense of home and community, and that, even that little piece of home that's Halloween, back again.
And is there any lesson that can be drawn from this? What do you think can be done in the future to prevent incidents like this from happening again?
It was kind of known that there was going to be a large crowd that night, and there was no preparation involved. So I hope other countries can see how important it is to have this type of safety precautions in place. Korea is not the first nor the last to have this type of incident, and it's just crazy to me how out of hand things can go quickly. So I hope between this and an event that happened in Texas within the past year with a similar situation, that we need to look into crowd control. Ever since we are all coming out of COVID, and I think we all have this type of energy, we're ready to escape the house, but that's known and it's shown to be a dangerous situation to be in. So we really need to put an emphasis globally around crowd control.
What the public can take away from this too as well, I think, and I've seen already signs of it right now, people are going out and they're actually learning CPR and first aid and sort of stuff like that. And there's been tutorials and videos about how to prevent and protect yourself from crowd crush situations too as well. They say wearing a backpack helps too as well, like around the back too as well, just help keep that space, right? Having that space around you as much as possible helps. Be kind of present, like what are your feet doing, like, you know, because you don't want to trip.
Just having someone at the top to like delegate certain things. And so, for example, if there is a body where, let's say a Halloween committee, where all bars are involved, if an owner of a club or a bar thinks, I think there's too many people here, can you send police officers here? And then have someone, some form of communication channel where if there's support needed, people just go and draw people to those areas where there needs to be support for managing crowds and everything. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing your perspectives with us. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.